He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We have a hell of a show today. By the way, I understand Donald Trump spoke to the president of Taiwan today, and it's driving the Reds nuts. That's great. Absolutely great. The little island of Taiwan. That sends a signal. And if he puts Bolton in as Secretary of State, he's got Mattis as Defense, and Pompeo as CIA, and Flynn as National Security Advisor. That would be unbelievable. But, of course, the left-wing kooks in the Senate, they call themselves Democrats, have already said they're not going to pass a statute enabling Mattis to become Secretary of State. So the Republicans in the Senate better get their brass knuckles on and better pull their pants up and get ready for a fight. They need to steamroll the minority. That's what they need to do. Steamroll the minority. All right. Every day I try to figure out what is a new, interesting, innovative way to get into some of these issues. I want to get back to an issue that is near and dear to so many of our hearts. That is liberty. Ever hear Huey Long? Most of you who are older, you've heard of Huey Long. Many of you younger probably never have. Huey Long in the 20s and 30s. He became governor of Louisiana. And in many respects, I'll say this, people are upset, I can't help it, he was a dictator. Now, he was a very poor man, grew up in rural Louisiana. He took on the Democrat establishment there, and he lost several rounds against them, and then he built this strong machine himself, going door to door to door. He was relentless. And he built this powerhouse of a Democrat party, a one-party state for so many decades in Louisiana. And Long became part of the hard left progressives in the 1930s, and along with Republicans, by the way. I mean, it was progressivism in the Democrat Party, progressivism in the Republican Party. Like it is today, almost. But I want you to listen to this. It's only 3.5 minutes long. I think I may have done this like 10 years ago, Mr. Producer. But I want you to listen to this. Yep. And I want to know, particularly if you populist, nationalist, agrarians agree with this. I want to know if you Republicans agree with this. I want to know if you Stephen Moore types agree with this. This is Huey Long, December 11, 1934. Cut to go.
According to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with. Now, how are you going to feed the balance of the people? What's Morgan and Baruch and Rockefeller and Mellon going to do with all that grub? They can't eat it. They can't wear the clothes. They can't live in the house. Give them a yacht. Give them a palace. Send them to Reno and give them a new wife when they want it. That's what they want. But when they've got everything on the God's living earth that they can eat and they can wear and they can live in, and all that their children can live in and wear and eat and all their children's children can use, then we got to call Mr. Morgan and Mr. Mellon and Mr. Rockefeller back and say, come back here. Put that stuff back on this table here that you took away from here, that you don't need. Leave something else for the American people to consume. And that's the program. We're not going to destroy the Gulf Refining Company. We're not going to destroy the Standard Oil Company. But we're going to say that the limit of any one man's stock ownership in the Standard Oil Company is from $3 to $5 million to that individual, and that the balance of the people of America own the balance of what the Standard Oil Company is worth. All right. Then, we start from the bottom, that the 25 or more million American families shall have a homestead, a home, and the comforts of a home, including an automobile and a radio, the things it takes in that house to live on. We say to America, 125 million, none shall be too big, none shall be too poor, none shall work too much, none shall be idle. No luxurious mansions empty, none walking the streets, none impoverished, none in pestilence, none in want, but in the land blessed by the smile of the Creator, with everything to be consumed, to be eaten, to be worn, that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
There you have it. 80-some years ago. You agree with all that? Do you agree with that? Huey Long? Governor of Louisiana? Sound pretty good? Populists out there sound pretty good? I bet it does. I'll address it in a minute. 10 years later, Franklin Roosevelt, in a radio address to the nation, promotes what he promoted in his last State of the Union speech as well, a second Bill of Rights. I want you to listen to this very carefully, too. See if you agree with it. Cut one, go.
In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industry, or shops, or farms, or mines of the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of farmers to raise and sell their products at a return which will give them and their families a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age and sickness and accident and unemployment. Finally, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. America's own rightful place in the world depends in large part upon how fully these and similar rights have been carried into practice for all our citizens. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world. One of the great American industrialists of our day a man who has rendered yeoman service to his country in this crisis, recently emphasized the grave dangers of rightist reaction in this nation. All clear-thinking businessmen share that concern. Indeed, if such reaction should develop, if history were to repeat itself, and we were to return to the so-called normalcy of the 1920s, then it is certain that even though we shall have conquered our enemies on the battlefields abroad, we shall have yielded to the spirit of fascism here at home. I ask the Congress to explore the means for implementing this economic Bill of Rights, for it is definitely the responsibility of the Congress so to do, and the country knows it. Many of these problems are already before committees of the Congress in the form of proposed legislation. I shall from time to time communicate with the Congress with respect to these and further proposals.
All right, what do you think of that? You like the second Bill of Rights? You like Huey Long's statement? Share the wealth? I mean, these rich robber barons, they can only use so much. They can only eat so much. They can only wear so many clothes, have so many palaces. What about everybody else? And what about the obligation? Everybody should have a home and a car and health care and retirement and food and all the basics and more than the basics. What about that? You have a problem with that? Well, let me comment on this as soon as I return.
Mark Levin.
Let me read this from the Soviet Constitution of 1936. Article 118. Citizens of the USSR have the right to work, that is, are guaranteed the right to employment and payment for their work in accordance with its quantity and quality. The right to work is ensured by the socialist organization of the national economy, the steady growth of the productive forces of Soviet society, the elimination of the possibility of economic crises, and the abolition of unemployment. That sounds pretty good. Article 119. Citizens of the USSR have the right to rest and leisure. The right to rest and leisure is ensured by the reduction of the working day to 7 hours for the overwhelming majority of the workers, the institution of annual vacations with full pay for workers and employees, and the provision of a wide network of sanatoria, rest homes, and clubs for the accommodation of the working people. Wow! Article 120 of the Soviet Constitution of 1936, citizens of the USSR have the right to maintenance in old age, and also in case of sickness or loss of capacity to work. This right is ensured by the extensive development of social insurance of workers and employees at state expense, free medical service for the working people, and the provision of a wide network of health resorts for the use of the working people. Sounds cool, right? Sounds like a really, really wonderful society. Article 121. Citizens of the USSR have the right to education. It's ensured by universal compulsory elementary education, by education including higher education, being free of charge, by the system of state stipends for the overwhelming majority of students in the universities and colleges, for instruction in schools being conducted in the native language, and by the organization in the factories, state farms, machine and tractor stations, and collective farms of free vocational, technical, agronomical training of the working people. Article 122. Women in the USSR are accorded equal rights with men in all spheres of economic, state, cultural, social, and political life. The possibility of exercising these rights is ensured to women by granting them an equal right with men to work, payment for work, rest and leisure, social insurance and education, and by state protection of the interests of the mother and child, pre-maternity and maternity leave with full pay, and the provision of a wide network of maternity homes, nurseries, and kindergartens. Wow! Such an advanced society. Article 123, equality of rights of citizens of the USSR, irrespective of their nationality or race, in all spheres of economic, state, and cultural, social, and political life, is an indefeasible law. Article 124, in order to ensure to citizens freedom of conscience, the church in the USSR is separated from the state and the school from the church. Freedom of religious worship and freedom of anti-religious propaganda is recognized for all citizens. The people in the USSR shall, A, be granted freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, including the holding of mass meetings, freedom of street processions and demonstrations. And it goes on. My God, that's a worker's paradise. What's the problem with the Soviet Constitution? What's the problem with Huey Long? What's the problem with the Second Bill of Rights from Franklin Roosevelt? What's the problem? The problem is liberty. Liberty gets in the way. The problem is the individual gets in the way. These utopian societies require adherence to the central government. That's the problem. When you abandon or eviscerate the American Constitution, in our case, none of these other things are really possible, because you're abandoning the Constitution for concentrated, centralized power in the relative handful of a relative few with an army of bureaucrats. The entire purpose of our Constitution is to enable you as a free individual to pursue your interests, to practice your faith, to build a business, to trade or not trade. The entire purpose of the Constitution is to set up a government that nurtures your unalienable rights. It doesn't provide you with your material interests and desires and demands. Because in order to do that, you have to deny somebody else their liberty. This isn't theoretical, this is legitimate. There's soft authoritarian regimes and genocidal authoritarian regimes, but they're authoritarian nonetheless. Well, I want to continue with this hour. There's other things I want to get to during the course of the program, including Keith X. More coming out on Keith X, the DNC chairman wannabe. But stick with me on this. I'll be right back.
The new American Revolution starts here. The Mark Levin Show. Call in at 877-381-3811.
Do you think Huey Long would agree with the protectionist and tariff policies being advocated today by the populists? You better believe he would. The progressives instituted them. How about Franklin Roosevelt? You better believe he would. I'm not talking about enforcing provisions of a trade deal with Japan involving discs or tires involving Japan. No, I'm talking about an ideology that if you dare to build enterprises overseas, that we're going to punish you. That mentality. Is that a freedom mentality? Is that a capitalism mentality? Will that build an economy? You know, before anybody else, really, before anybody else, I've been a fan of Sarah Palin. I was a fan of Sarah Palin when she was governor of Alaska. She was on our radar. You know, we talked about her here. I don't always agree with Sarah Palin. She doesn't always agree with me. It's not like we're in touch all the time. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to read something that she published, an op-ed, over at Young Conservatives, youngcons.com, yesterday. about this Carrier deal. She said, I'm ecstatic for Carrier employees. Their bosses just decided to keep shop. What a relief for hundreds of workers. Merry Christmas, Indiana. We don't yet know terms of the public-private deal that was cut to make the company stay. We do at this point, but that doesn't matter. But let's hope every business is equally incentivized to keep Americans working in America. Foundational to our exceptional nation's sacred private property rights, a business must have to locate where it wishes. In a free market, if a business makes a mistake, including a marketing mistake that perhaps Carrier executives made, threatening to move elsewhere, claiming efficiency's sake, then the market's invisible hand punishes. Thankfully, that same hand rewards based on good business decisions. But this time-tested truth assumes we're operating on a level playing field. When government steps in arbitrarily with individual subsidies, favoring one business over others, it sets inconsistent, unfair, illogical precedent. Meanwhile, the invisible hand that best orchestrates a free people's free enterprise system gets amputated. Then special interests creep in and manipulate markets. Republicans oppose this, remember? Instead, we support competition on a level playing field, remember? Because we know special interest crony capitalism is one big fail. What she means is our government ought not benefit one business against another. Politicians picking and choosing recipients of corporate welfare is railed against by fiscal conservatives for it's a hallmark of corruption and socialism. The Obama administration dealt in it in spades. Recall Solyndra, stimulus boondoggles, and all their other taxpayer-subsidized anchors on our economy. A $20 trillion debt-ridden country cannot afford this sinfully stupid practice, so vigilantly guard against its continuance, or we're doomed. Reaganites learned it is policy change that changes economic trajectory. Reagan's successes were built on establishing a fiscal framework that invigorated our entire economy, revitalized growth and investment while decreasing spending, tax rates, overreaching regulations, unemployment, and favoritism via individual subsidies. We need Reaganites in the new administration. This is Palin. However well-meaning, burdensome federal government imposition is never the solution. Never. Not in our homes, not in our schools, not in our churches, not in our businesses. Got to have faith the Trump team knows all this. And I'll be the first to acknowledge concerns over a deal cut by leveraging taxpayer interest to make a manufacturer stay put, are unfounded once terms are made public. She's exactly right. And she's not alone. She's not alone. Cut 3, Mr. Producer, go.
Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. The more the plans fail, the more the planners plan. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
As representatives of Main Street America, would you please send Washington a message? Get your hands out of our pockets, get control of your own budget, and let us get on with the job of rebuilding America.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go, and by what route, and how fast. Almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. We, the people, are free.
The answer to a government that's too big is to stop feeding its growth. Government spending has been growing faster than the economy itself. The massive national debt which we accumulated is the result of the government's high-spending diet. Well, it's time to change the diet.
Well, by trusting in the people rather than government planners, by leaving resources in their hands instead of taking them away, we unleash the most powerful and creative force on this planet, the American free enterprise system. Remember, there are no limits to growth and human progress when men and women are free to follow their dreams. The American dream belongs to you.
And as an ancient Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu said, govern a great nation as you would cook a small fish. Do not overdo it.
Even after I leave office, I will never stop campaigning for the tools needed to limit the insatiable fiscal appetite of government.
Yeah. Now, I'm playing this for you. I'm talking you through this. I'm doing all this because there's another force out there, an old force, the new nationalism and populism. And I intend to push back because I want to see this country succeed. I want to see this country to be economically successful. I want to see more people become wealthy. I want to see more people have good jobs. I want to see the people who have good jobs keep their jobs. And the way that you do that is through capitalism. It's the most successful economic model ever. It's given us virtually every benefit of our lifestyle. It doesn't mean some people won't be fired and rehired. It doesn't mean some industries won't go out of business, replaced by other industries. You can't stop economic growth, economic change. And so what you ought to do is unleash the economy so that more and more people get more and more jobs with more and more opportunities to create wealth. This used to be very basic stuff for conservatives, but apparently it's not today. Apparently it's not. Sorry, that's too damn bad. Count me among those who count this as the right approach. Not just in America, but everywhere. Everywhere. Not only should we be preaching liberty and opportunity and capitalism in America, we should be preaching it all over the world. Here's Margaret Thatcher. Way back when, in her last battle in Parliament before she left as Prime Minister, hat tipped the telegraph, cut 5, go.
When Margaret Thatcher was elected Britain's first female Prime Minister in May 1979, she set about smashing the existing economic order. She introduced free market policies that helped the country throw off its post-war malaise and shook up the banking world with a flurry of deregulation, making London one of the world's most important financial centres.
She thought the financial services industry was an industry that could flower and blossom and create great wealth for the nation. But I think that the main point would be that she saw Britain as the bankers of the world.
The mainstream of her activity was to move over to market economics and to get rid of the rust bucket legacy, which we've been trying to keep going, of old-fashioned, heavy, loss-making industry and absurd restrictive practices in public sector-owned industries as well. And she took on the profession, she took on the city, she actually believed that people should be responsible in the way they did things. And looking back, I think the main thing she did was modernise.
In 1986, Margaret Thatcher pushed through a series of reforms, the so-called Big Bang, attracting international banks and foreign businesses to the City of London.
What Big Bang did actually was open up the gateway for the American banks to come in and then all the international banks to come in. And we've seen in the last 25 years London come as probably the preeminent financial capital.
But while she ushered in an era of unprecedented growth, her legacy on economic issues remains divisive, with some arguing her policies sowed the seeds for the 2008
Now you're about to hear You're about to hear from the communist mayor of London. At least back then, this guy Ken Livingstone. Go ahead.
She deregulated the banks. Shamefully, Blair and Brown carried on with this nonsense. The crisis we're living in today is the legacy of Thatcherism, just like the crisis in America is the legacy of Reagan. We need a more fair society. We need a high investment, high skill economy. And there is no way out of this without that.
Margaret Thatcher's influence on other parts of the economy has proved just as enduring. She took a hard line during strikes in the mid-1980s, facing down coal miners with riot police and crushing the power of Britain's once powerful unions. Her commitment to free markets led her to sell off a raft of state-owned industries, from British Gas to British Airways, and to cut taxes.
She was very keen on privatisation, and she recognised that to have a successful privatisation, whatever rules you created, whatever you did with debt, however you organised the financial structure, in the end it's about people.
It was not in favour of picking winners. It was not about giving large amounts of money to industry. It was about creating the right climate for industry and letting them compete.
She was as tough a negotiator abroad as she was at home, staunchly opposed to the idea of a single European currency, and she refused to entertain the notion of giving up the pound. Her critics and supporters alike would agree that by the time Margaret Thatcher left Downing Street in November of 1990, Britain was a very different place from when she first took office.
She opposed this European Union centralization. She opposed getting rid of the pound sterling silver, and she fought all those things. She was way ahead of her time during her time. My concern, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are regressing. The Republican Party is regressing. The nation is regressing. That we've lost sight of liberty. That we're getting caught up in mobocracy. We're getting caught up in class warfare. The same class warfare that was spewed by Theodore Roosevelt. The same class warfare that was spewed by Woodrow Wilson. Yes, by Herbert Hoover, by Franklin Roosevelt, and by the left, by Bernie Sanders today. The populists, the pseudo-conservatives, they sound very familiar to the statists and the progressives. Now, there are distinctions. There's no question about it. The left would never support tax cuts or regulatory control, and they don't believe in a strong defense and securing the border. Not talking about any of that. But a government economy is freedom. The freedom to succeed, the freedom to fail. The freedom to move around in the job market, mobility. Liberty is inextricably linked to economic liberty. And they're both inextricably linked to constitutional republicanism. And yet all three must be severely damaged to go the way of the left in this country. And I'm just suggesting to you that we should not contribute to that degradation in any respect and in any way. That after 8 years of Obama, what we need is freedom. That might mean failure, but it might be mean fabulous success as well. Reject Huey Long. Reject Franklin Roosevelt. Reject all of it. Embrace Thatcher. Embrace Reagan. Embrace your own liberty. It's about you, after all. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Got a great story to tell you. Well, a very interesting story to tell you next hour. One I hadn't even known about. But I think it's a bracing story, a compelling story next hour. So I think you're going to want to hear this story. Even Mr. Producer said, holy mackerel, that happened? Oh, yes, it did. Happy holidays from the IRS. That's right, they're stalking you, demanding you pay your back taxes, but you don't have the money, right? So you ignore them, hoping to get through the holidays? Well, you're about to have the worst Christmas ever. The IRS is notorious for getting more aggressive through the holidays. They know companies hand out holiday and year-end bonuses, and they want them. Don't let the IRS ruin your holidays. Call my friends at Optima Tax Relief. Now, you hear about all these tax groups that can help you in dealing with the IRS. This is the best one. They're the experts. They're the pros. Optima can stop the demand letters and stop the aggressive collection actions. Speak with an expert about the Fresh Start Initiative, arguably the best, biggest break the IRS has ever offered. You could save thousands, even tens of thousands, and nobody knows it better than Optima Tax Relief. And by the way, they're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They've helped thousands of folks save millions of dollars. Let Optima Tax Relief give you peace of mind this holiday season. Call for your free consultation. Ask about their one-of-a-kind money-back guarantee. Call 800-499-6300, 800-499-6300. That's 800-499-6300. Let us go to Ray, Fort Worth, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Hello, Mark. You're doing a great job educating the American people in regard to socialism and free market capitalism.
Well, it's not only that, it's protectivism and what has become national progressivism.
I agree with you. Socialism always and in every case devastates economies. The British Empire lost their empire largely due to socialism. Look at Argentina, Venezuela, almost every country in Africa. Socialism always degenerates into loss of liberty and a tyrannical government. Tyranny, we need liberty, not tyranny. And socialism cannot work.
And by the way, democratic socialism or a soft socialism, on top of what Obama has already done to the economy and these businesses, in the end will be devastating.
Absolutely.
I mean, we may have a sprint of economic growth here because people are thrilled that Obama's going to be gone and Hillary lost and there's great hope and so forth and so on. And the tax cuts and regulatory reduction will give a shot in the arm. But then what's going to happen is businesses, in many respects, that need to expand overseas for a lot of reasons having nothing to do with labor won't. And the contraction will begin. Begin in a few years, could begin earlier than that, could begin later than that. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Look, if you're a thinker, if you have curiosity, if you really want to reason through things, this is the place to be. Seriously. If you just want to hear repetition and spin, then this isn't the place to be. This is what conservative talk radio should be all about. And in the bottom here, at bottom, it's liberty and individualism. It's not about any politician or political party. You know, people will go on radio and TV about, I'm sick of politics. They obviously are not well read. You know how Aristotle viewed politics? He viewed it as life. There's politics in your personal life. There's politics in politics. And so people use the rubric of politics in an incorrect way. We're talking about humanity, human relations, how we organize ourselves. And it's very, very important. Because in the end, you know, these philosophers that are, they're elitists, philosophers, what the hell? They use big words and syllables, 4 syllables in a word, and they think that. Philosophy always applies to practical politics. What do you think the Red Chinese are doing? What do you think they're doing in Venezuela and Cuba? What do you think we're doing in this country, the progressive era? It's a philosophical era that has done enormous damage in so many respects to this country. So either you embrace the Declaration of the Constitution, natural law and unalienable rights, or you embrace this stuff called progressivism, where the government should step in and help businesses or hurt businesses and do this, that, and the other. And it amazes me that people are willing to accept this kind of soft tyranny just because a Republican does it. I mean, instinctively, we Americans should be repulsed by it. Doesn't mean you're repulsed by Donald Trump in every respect or anybody else in every respect. You got to be mature enough to actually reason through these things. Because there is a pattern that develops. Put Trump aside. When the iron fist of government is used for what you think is good, the iron fist of government can be used to crush you too. Because there's nothing to control it, or very little. And things get out of hand. That's the history of the world. I want to read you a little story that was sent to me by a buddy of mine, Morton Blackwell. It's from December 7th, of all dates, 2012, from Bloomberg. When the Army invaded Montgomery Ward, there used to be a company called Montgomery Ward. They were a retail company. I used to shop there, but no more. I want you to listen to this. It's very important. This is the story I wanted to tell you. I'd never heard of this before. Many corporate executives have defied the government. How many have been willing to be carried from their offices by soldiers for doing it? Sewell Avery was, in 1944, Avery, the head of retail giant Montgomery Ward, was ordered by President Franklin Roosevelt to settle a strike with his workers. Now listen to this. He was ordered by President Franklin Roosevelt to settle a strike with his workers. When he refused, the government took over his company. In an iconic photo of the era, two soldiers hold Avery in a sitting position, his arms crossed, a look of insubordination on his face as they removed him from his own building. Although the company was eventually returned to private hands, Avery didn't relent in his opposition to Roosevelt or the New Deal. He continued to combine business with politics. The mixture didn't go very well for him or for his company. Avery was born into a prominent family in Saginaw, Michigan. He got his start managing a small gypsum plant, which was folded into the United States Gypsum Company in 1901. Avery worked his way up to president within a few years. In the depths of the Great Depression, he took charge of the struggling retailer Montgomery Ward. Founded in 1872, the company had pioneered catalog sales, but had steadily lost ground to its Chicago rival Sears Roebuck & Company. Avery slashed costs, fired workers, closed stores, and reduced lines. The strategy worked, and the company's finances soon rebounded. In other words, they were going broke. But even as the country began to recover from the Depression and Avery's personal wealth soared, he remained convinced the economy was on the path to ruin. He kept generous cash on hand at Montgomery Ward, fearing destabilizing effects of government policies. A fierce proponent of free markets, he opposed Roosevelt's seemingly pro-business National Recovery Act that was not pro-business, which allowed industries to set prices and control output. And he held out against labor unions, convinced that in resisting these, quote, robbers of liberty, unquote, he was speaking to the hearts of millions. He helped to finance anti-Roosevelt groups and urged Montgomery Ward's shareholders to vote in the 1935 election to end burdensome and inequitable taxes, which he said were holding back business expansion. Such fulminations pitted Avery against a popular president who won re-election by overwhelming majorities in 1936 and 1940. When the nation entered World War II, his battle took on national defense implications. In 1942, Roosevelt reauthorized the World War I-era War Labor Board. Composed of business, political, and union leaders, the board arbitrated labor disputes to prevent any slowdown of production. Unions agreed not to strike for the duration of the war so long as management agreed to abide by the board's decisions. Well, Avery wasn't all that pleased with the government board making decisions for his company. When his employees sought to unionize, he declined to recognize them, incensed particularly by a maintenance of membership clause in their proposed contract. New workers would be automatically enrolled in the union after 15 days, a concession the government granted in exchange for a pledge not to strike. Avery said no. It's the first step toward a closed shop. The conflict simmered for almost 2 years, then came to a boil on April 27, 1944, when the company's labor agreements expired. Without a contract, the workers weren't bound by the no-strike pledge. Roosevelt ordered Avery to either extend the contract pending a union certification vote or accede to government seizure of his company. Well, he refused. So soldiers arrived and took him out the door. And on his way out, Avery allegedly could be heard shouting something to the effect, "You New Dealers, you." Softening his tone a bit later, he affirmed his support for the war effort and joked, "I've been fired before, but this is the first time they ever carried me out feet first." But he was steadfast that his actions were a protest against political slavery, not the war. Well, the case quickly made it to the courts. As the judge deliberated, Montgomery Ward was nominally being run by the U.S. Department of Commerce. Before a ruling could be handed down, however, the union completed its election and employees returned to work. On May 9, Commerce Secretary Jesse Jones returned the company to private management. Avery wasn't placated. He rejected the union contract, and by December the labor situation had deteriorated once again. Workers in Detroit and Chicago again went on strike. On December 27, 1944, the president ordered the War Department to take over his company. This time Avery stayed in his executive suite, while Major General Joseph Byron and his staff made do with an office nearby. The general and the chief executive officer traded control of Avery's reserved parking space, depending on who arrived first. Avery and his team engaged in a sort of passive resistance, refusing to show where the company books were kept or to aid in their use. The general warned that employees could be dismissed for noncompliance and then reclassified for active service by their draft boards. While the government argued that Avery's actions imperiled the business-labor accord, Avery countered that the War Labor Board was merely an advisory body and that his company wasn't a war production facility. It was a retail company. The issue ended up back in federal court for months. Finally, on October 18, 1945, the Army relinquished control once more. The fight with Roosevelt hardened Avery's resolve against liberalism. He purged company managers who opposed his view, and Montgomery Ward entered the post-war decades with Avery at 76, running it as a one-man show. He criticized companies that offered their workers frills, what he called frills, benefits and so forth. But Montgomery Ward, as customers moved to the suburbs in the 1950s, Avery and Montgomery Ward stuck with their aging downtown stores. Montgomery Ward rallied Ward a number of times over the past 4 decades, but its best days were over. In 2000, the company closed its doors for good. Only the name survives, purchased by an online retailer. Avery died in 1960. What do you think of that? Does that concern you at all? Does that concern you at all when Donald Trump says, if you have a company, or you're going to build a company abroad and cost American jobs, he's not going to allow it? Does that concern you? Besides the economic consequences of such a decision, which are not in dispute, quite frankly, what do you think about that? Did you know about that? I hadn't known about that. The more you learn about the iron fist of Franklin Roosevelt and his so-called brain trust, his packing the courts, his overturning the Constitution, his war on capitalism, the more outrageous it is, right? What if I told you a fairly close advisor to the president-elect has pointed me to the 1930s as an example? 1930s, what I'm talking about now, as an example of the kind of industrial expansion and industrial policy that the president-elect should, in some, if not many respects, replicate. In other words, even if you don't want to do this as an administration, where do you draw the line? I tried to talk about some of this yesterday and give examples. Where do you draw the line? Carrier this time. Build a facility overseas. And Donald Trump said, I don't give a damn. Sell it, bulldoze it, whatever. That's your problem. And they gave the company $7 million. There's a guy on Fox who fancies himself a business analyst, given his own experience. And he thinks this deal with Carrier is the best thing since sliced bread. All the taxes that will come into the federal government and the state in exchange for the $7 million. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not the way it's supposed to work. We don't exist to pay taxes, and our taxes shouldn't be paid to subsidize businesses. That's corporate welfare. That's corporate cronyism. I don't care who does it. I don't care if Moses did it. You cannot grow an economy this way in the long run. You create economic dislocation. And even worse, you limit the expansion of the economy. If it expands at 3%, maybe it would have expanded at 5%. And you have no idea the number of businesses that might be created, the number of jobs that might be created, the number of products that might be created. If this had been the mentality during the horse and buggy era, we're going to subsidize horse and buggies. We're going to make sure that they keep those factories open till the end of time. We're not going to allow companies to invest in X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and whatever the government will decide. Well, we wouldn't have the great middle class that we have today, would we? No, I don't think we would. Now, I may be the lone voice in this format, but I will continue to be that lone voice. And that's what happens when people are so easily convinced to surrender their liberty by people who wave little objects in front of their eyes. Competition is important. Competition is what creates all these cutting-edge drugs and cutting-edge products and improving lifestyle and extending life. That's what it's about. Otherwise, what's the point? I'm not saying materialism. The left talks about materialism while they attack the capitalists. But they're the materialists. They judge everything. They measure everything by who has what and how much it is, and the bureaucrats decide who should get what, and so forth and so on. I think this is very, very important. We're going to move along. I'm not going to surrender this issue. Don't worry. But we are going to move along. There's other things to talk about. So I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
James, Appleton, Wisconsin, the great WTAQ. Go.
Mark, it's an honor and privilege to talk to you. So I'll keep it brief because I promised I would. I have an amazing story for those people who think more government in your life or in a business's life is good for the individual or a country. My father, who is self-employed, he's a dental lab technician. That's fancy for the guy who makes false teeth, really. He didn't have any money, grew up in poverty as a kid, so he joined the Navy to learn a trade. And that's where he learned how to make false teeth. Well, through the course of the years, he built a very good business on his own. Didn't hire anyone. Had a dental lab out of his house and worked for several dentists throughout the course of his life. Well, he paid off his home and took care of us, my mom and the kids and everything. Well, growing up, he decided that he wanted to help his small community out, about 1,200 people in a small Wyoming town. Well, he decided that there was a lot of people in that small town that he would make dentures for free. So he'd go to nursing homes, and he'd built a relationship with these people. He'd known them, his whole life. And to make a long story short, a local dentist who was overcharging these elderly people for dentures, partials, crowns, bridges. This local dentist reported my father to a state attorney in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for providing these services for free. Well, lo and behold, my father gets a knock on the door from a representative from the state attorney's office in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Asked him flat out if he was basically operating as a
All right, hold on. I got to carry you over to the bottom of the hour. He gets the knock at the door. The investigator asks him if he's making these dentures, these false teeth, in his home. Now, we're going to get the end of the story from James in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the modern voice of the Founding Fathers. This is the Mark Levin Show. Dial in now at 877-381-3811.
Don't you love it when people call you globalists and purists, when all you are is a constitutional conservative? All constitutional conservatives don't agree with each other. All capitalists don't agree with each other. But this is the best they can do. It's like a liberal calling somebody a racist. You just call them a globalist or a purist. Because they are incapable of making a cogent, substantive, rational argument. So they call you a globalist or a somethingist. No, that's not it. That's not at all. We have a noggin and we put it to work. We don't think with our knees. We're not knee-jerking all over the place. That simple. The whole world watched the outcome of the presidential election because the office is the most powerful in the world. But the powers of the presidency are limited. They are restrained by the Constitution. Recently, sadly, the restraints were breached. Think numerous executive orders, executive agencies, and the usurping of power from the other two branches. The only hope in restoring the proper role of the new president is for the people to demand it. And that starts with your knowing what the Constitution says. Right now, go to levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. Register for a timely, free online course brought back for a very limited period by Hillsdale College. The Presidency and the Constitution. Every citizen needs to take it. You'll learn in 10 short lessons the original purpose of the executive branch and how the Constitution limits its power. You see, the Founding Fathers gave the real power to the public, to the people. But if Americans don't know what the Constitution says, how will we hold our government to account? Show the world that you'll help restore the office of the presidency and limit the federal government. Register right now, levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. Well, let us finish with our friend James in Wisconsin. Go.
So, Mark, the state of Wyoming, the state attorney's office showed up at his door.
Showed up at your father's door who was making false teeth. Okay.
Yeah, free of charge.
Free of charge for elderly and others.
Yes. So they threatened him with arrest if he didn't cease and desist. But here's the kicker. What they really wanted was this property. They said if he did not stop doing what he owns 40 acres in the Black Hills out in Wyoming. And I'm sorry, I'm really emotional about this because my dad.
But I don't understand if he doesn't stop. Okay, if he doesn't start giving stop giving false teeth to poor people and elderly people for free, they're going to take his property?
Absolutely, because what that's doing is because you have to work under the license of a dentist, he can do what he's doing without a license. He just has to perform it through a licensed dentist, even though he's fully trained to do it.
All right.
The local dentist was charging such exorbitant rates that
I understand, but and I appreciate it. That's a different issue. I sympathize with you on whether people should be licensed to be dentists, to be doctors, to be lawyers. That really wasn't the focus of what I've been talking about, but I understand that. I'm talking about a federal iron fist on the economy. But I understand your point, and I'm sympathetic, and I'm sorry you all had to go through that. Let's go to Ted, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the great WPGP. Go.
Mr. Levin, Merry
Yes,
Christmas
that's
and
me.
a Happy New Year to your family.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm 67 years old, and I labored all my life.
You're only 8 years older than I am, by the way.
You're kidding me.
Nope.
Well, you don't sound that old on the radio.
No, I'm getting old. Me and my heart disease and everything else. But anyway, go right ahead.
Well, sir, I don't want to sound selfish but me and my wife, we worked hard all our lives, and I'm retired, but
well, let
we
me
still
stop.
have to work.
Hold on now. Now, you worked hard your whole life, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And why is it, sir, that I never hear anybody ever mention about the people in this country that has worked all their lives, and all you hear about is what they're going to spend millions and billions of dollars on everything else. But I don't know if you're aware of what the Social Security and the increases that we get every year is pathetic.
Are you aware that Social Security goes broke in 16 years?
Yes.
All right, now let's talk this through. So how should we deal with this? Do you know why it goes broke in 16 years?
Well, from what I've always heard was they were tapping out of it.
You're right. There is no trust fund. They took all the money out of the trust fund to spend it on infrastructure and 1,000 other stupid ideas. Now, if you do that in the private sector, Ted, what happens to you? You go to prison.
Yes.
But here, people are applauded. Oh, that person must be compassionate. So it needs to be addressed. Now, let me ask you a question, Ted. Who is addressing it? Nobody.
As far as I know, no one.
No one. So what's going to happen?
Well...
All right, so here's my point to you. You and your wife are hardworking people. My parents, quote-unquote middle class, hardworking people. They didn't work for a union. They didn't earn a salary. First, they set up a day camp in a nursery school. Then they sold it for a modest amount. Then they decided they wanted to open a small shop just so they could put food on the table for us in suburban Philadelphia. We had some very tough weeks, some very tough months, and some better weeks and better months. And when the economy went sour, guess what? People weren't buying a lot of furniture and so forth and so on. So things got tough. And they worked very, very hard. But I'll tell you what, Ted, you know what they never said to us, ever? What will the government do for me?
No.
They never once said that to us. They were solid conservatives. They were Republicans. They despised liberals. They despised people who didn't want to work for a living, who wanted freebies. They just taught us, I guess, the old-fashioned way. You want something, get off your ass and earn it. And so when I hear about free college and free this and free that, and people who come into this country brand new, you get food stamps and you get this, it just frosts me. It absolutely frosts me. And I'll tell you something else, Ted. When we have leftists like Obama who are killing business in this country with massive taxes and regulations, the man is pushing out regulations while he's getting out the door. Some of the worst regulations during his presidency. And frankly, when we have a president-elect who says, look, I'm going to decide how companies are going to operate each other, how they're going to operate, and they better not operate the way I've operated. I say, you know what? The greatest spurt of economic growth, actually the greatest period of economic growth, was under Reagan, Ted.
Right.
That's why he won 49 states in 1984. That's why he won all but 13 electoral college votes in 1984, because he put his principles into action. You want to create solid jobs for hardworking Americans? We know how to do it. We did it 30 years ago. Just do it. And by the way, Ted, do you watch Levin TV at all?
No, sir.
Can I give you that? Would you like to get it?
love to get it.
All right, don't hang up. We're going to give you the whole network. Conservative Review TV, just a wonderful host, Steve Crowder, Michelle Malkin. I'm on there with Levin TV. The others will be coming a little bit later, but don't hang up. You're a good man. Good man. Let's slip in some more, shall we? Linda, where are you, Linda?
I'm excellent, sir. How are you doing?
No, I'm excellent. Where are you?
I'm an implant into Mount Ida, Arkansas.
Where is Mount Ida? Is it near any kind of city I'd be familiar with?
We are about 65 miles west of Hot Springs.
So you're Hot Springs. We know who used to like Hot Springs, don't we? Yeah. FDR.
No, and I never went into a stupid little museum there in downtown Hot Springs.
But you're out in the rural area, aren't you?
Excuse me, yes, sir. I sure am. It's an interesting place to live. I moved here from Hawaii. And
what? Not that I'm against it, but that's like night and day.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you know, when you're taking care of your elderly parents and you're the only sibling that's really
that's true.
Really free to do it. Anyway,
well, good for you. Good for you. Yes, ma'am.
I was going into my mom now. My dad died. Into their laundromat. I manage it for her because she has dementia and everything, which is immaterial. You made a statement as I was going into the laundromat that Mr. Trump was talking about not allowing businesses to go to other countries.
That's what he said. He's not going to allow them to build plants overseas.
Okay, now, I mean,
if it costs our jobs. And I'm saying any time you put money overseas, you can make the argument that it's taking money out of our economy and at least theoretically costing jobs. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Sure. I mean, it is. But, okay, you cannot, we have freedom of commerce, okay? And I agree 100% about these big businesses and taking away the jobs here in the United States. But, you know, Big Brother...
How do you know big businesses aren't creating jobs in the United States?
Well, I'm sure that they are, but it's just like, dadgummit,
how do you know big businesses wouldn't bring more jobs from overseas? By the way, isn't it would bring more businesses from overseas if they had more capital to do it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we can insource jobs. You know, we're so inside the box here, Linda. The way we talk, not you and I'm just saying the way we talk about this. I'm going to bring jobs back, and I'm going to stop. I have an idea. Let's create an environment where other businesses all over the world come to us.
I agree 100%. I do. And if our big businesses feel that they have to go to a different country because of taxes and whatever,
then change our taxes and whatever, right?
No. You know what it is you cannot tell a business where they can do business. You know, you're taking.
I agree with you, but if you want to create an environment, an entrepreneurial environment, then create it.
Yeah,
but you can't keep browbeating. I'm going to get on the phone and tell this guy from Carrier, and I'm going to give them $7 million in tax subsidies. And then you actually have so-called capitalists sitting there saying, hey, that means the federal government gets $70 million in tax revenue. It doesn't work that way. That's not how you create a vibrant, growing economy that hires people and creates opportunities and wealth.
Why don't they just create a horrendous import tax on all of this stuff? You know, whether it's China or whatever, or even if like Carrier wants to go down.
Because then those washing machines in your if somebody wants to open a business like yours, they won't be able to afford to.
I believe that Mr. Trump is Obama bin Laden. Dumb.
No. All right, cool it. Just remember, everything you say, they paste on to me. So, all right, Linda. But anyway, I appreciate your call. No, he's not Obama bin Laden. He's Obama Milhouse Benito Hussein. Barack, or Barry, for short. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
mood for Italian food. A nice big bowl of spaghetti with marinara sauce, and Italian bread and butter, with a ginger ale. Is there something so wrong about that, Mr. Producer? Well, you're Italian. There's nothing wrong with that. Man, am I in the mood for that. Instead, I'm eating grapes. The experts at ZipRecruiter, well, they understand that the end of the year can be a difficult time for filling positions within your company, which is why they've created a way for you to reach qualified candidates through a network of job and social media sites. ZipRecruiter has streamlined hiring to help your business to find the best candidates fast. Now, you, my listeners, you can post for free with ZipRecruiter.com. Create a free job posting in less than 5 minutes and start receiving qualified candidates as soon as today. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100-plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 1 million businesses. And right now, you, my listeners, you can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Levin. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Levin. One more time so you can try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Levin, Levin. Okay. By the way, we know that John Bolton was interviewed by Donald J. Trump Jr. today. We saw that on the news. We hope that went well. The left is trying to attack all these appointees all at once, particularly the conservatives. This guy Mattis, I like this guy Mattis. Mr. Producer's been reading some of his quotes and says, oh my God, this guy is terrific. Which means for the left that they hate him. They prefer Ash Carter to be Secretary of Defense. Ash Carter? Who the hell's Ash Carter? Nobody knows who the hell Ash Carter is. But Mattis, a great general, great Marine, hey, look, he's a little salty. Can't have that. Can't have that. Now, this is the party of Bill Clinton. This is the party of Anthony Weiner's Weiner. It's the party of B.J. Bill Jefferson Clinton. And they have a problem with Mattis. I'm telling you. That fool McConnell, he better be ready. The other fools better be ready to suspend the filibuster rule. I'm quite serious about this. All right. Let's see. Let us take another call. Charles! Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on the Mark Levin app. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. I'm a little nervous. I'm a first-time caller.
Don't be. Relax.
When you were talking about Franklin Roosevelt, I personally have some issues with him as far as personal property rights. He signed an executive order in 1933, and it required every U.S. citizen to turn in all their gold.
All right, you're correct.
That was the largest gold heist ever in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't done with a gun, it was done with a pen.
Mm-hmm. This is what happens, isn't it? This is what happens when all of a sudden these things sound so cool. Yes, give politicians and bureaucrats power, and they all do it for America, for the working people. You know, Mao did everything for the working people. Stalin did everything for the working people. Castro, they're all full of crap. Leave us alone. We'll work it out. We're Americans. You're exactly right. Thank you for reminding us. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It is. We call it a microphone. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Look, I'm not going to entertain people who echo each other and say the same thing when they call in. For instance, we have a caller waiting. He says, tax breaks happen all the time. All Trump did was encourage carrier. That environment going to change. Nothing communist about it. I didn't say it was communist, number one. Well, bring him back. I mean, it's kind of a waste of time to keep going over these things. David, Billings, Montana. You're on KYYA. You understand there's a difference between cherry-picking specific companies and having an across-the-board tax cut, right?
I do, Mark, but at the same time...
But some of us reject the cherry-picking altogether and believe that that is inappropriate. Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm a small businessman and I'm struggling, okay? And I'm in Billings, Montana. And there's a company down the street, 20 miles down the street. Now, there's just 12 of us in my little business, but there's a company down the street, and I'm struggling. I don't know if I'm going to make it next year. But the company down the street, well, they got 300 people. And they say, you know what, I'm going to move my business overseas. I can't stand the tax situation here. We're overwhelmed with these regulations and so forth and so on. And in comes the President of the United States, and he says, okay, and the governor, and they say, okay, we'll give you $7 million. We'll see what we can do for you. And off they go. Now, that's my part. I have to pay, in part, for that $7 million. Nobody's doing me any favors. Now, I'm glad that they're happy. But what about my life? What about my family? What about my business? What about the people who work for me? There's no end to this. So the answer should be you create an environment, you slash taxes, which he's going to do to his credit. You slash the regulations, which he's going to do to his credit. You encourage foreign companies to come into this country, which is exactly what happened 30 years ago. So you have such an influx of capital, such demand on labor. You know, wages go up. That's the way you do it. You don't do it like this, like you're the king of the world. Go ahead.
Here's my question to you, Mark, is I'm just trying to grasp the concept that, you know...
You're trying to grasp the concept of capitalism?
No, Mark,
You know what happens in capitalism? Businesses fail.
Assumptions. It's the assumptions of what Trump has done. It's an assumption of what Trump has done. He may have had a conversation just like what you talked about with
no, he didn't.
Carrier, and said, you know what, stay put. We're going to knock this corporate rate from 35 to 15. We're going to.
Well, then don't give him $7 million.
But the state did that, Mark. The state.
No, let me tell you something. They had already offered them that. The governor of the state was Mike Pence. They already offered them that, and they turned it down. So here's a company that's owned by United Technologies that does $6.5 billion with the federal government. I would really like to know what was discussed in there. Are you still there?
Yeah, but I would too. I would love to know too, but I don't know. I think the assumption that something devious is going on.
Listen, I don't know what else to do. I have spent 2 hours now on this program discussing progressivism, centralized government, massive American debt, economic cronyism, and capitalism, free markets, and you circle all the way back to the beginning. Well, you know, I don't know what the problem is. Well, let me ask you, which companies should get subsidies and which shouldn't? Tell us. Tell the whole country.
You know, Mark...
Please just answer my question. Don't shoot back at me. Which companies should get subsidies?
The ones that will impact the economy of the whole the most.
Holy mackerel. Well, who's going to decide that?
You create a fair environment for all businesses.
There is never a fair environment. It's called capitalism. Some people succeed and some fail. If some schmuck in the basement creates something that nobody wants and he fails, that's not my problem.
Mark, that's against everything that goes on in business. Insurance companies give...
What do you mean it's against everything? Companies. Get out of here, will you? I can't take it. I just can't take it. It's against, Mr. Producer. I think I was patient. Do you agree with me? Maybe not. It's against everything that goes on in capitalism and business. If a guy starts a business that's not successful, we're supposed to subsidize it? Oh, my Lord, I'm telling you, there's about 30 or 35% of us left. I really believe that. I'm guessing he's a Republican. I'm guessing he votes for Trump. I'm guessing before that he voted for Romney and McCain. Even Bernie Sanders isn't proposing subsidizing all of it. Oh, my Lord. I'm just telling you. Incredible. It's like having people who never went to college subsidizing people to go to college who will earn more than they do. There's a psychological issue here, and it's this. I can tangibly touch Carrier. There's Carrier. There it is. It's there. I can have a press conference there and so forth. But the expense for subsidizing Carrier and the marginal impact that has, we use the word marginal, and the marginal impact that has can't really be grasped. You can't really feel it. You can't really, because it's diffused among the population. So I'm giving specific examples. A little business down the street that's really, really struggling. And let me tell you something else. Most businesses in this country are small businesses. The vast majority of people who are employed in this country are employed by small businesses. And now they and you and I are going to subsidize big businesses. This thing is all upside down. It truly is. Like my damn computer that just snuffed out again. Mr. Producer, give me a call, will you? WSKY, our great affiliate, Michael in Florida. Go.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Okay.
Come on, you got to get with it. You got to speak. Go.
Yeah. Okay, on the subject of employment, I live in a small community, but since the start of this program, I've checked, and there's like 600 and something jobs available in this immediate area.
Mm-hmm.
So people are saying that there's no jobs available. They're wrong. People are not willing to work. That I believe.
Well, a lot of people aren't willing to move. So let's say you're in a small town and the major company goes out of business and they say, I'm unemployed. Well, sometimes you got to move.
No.
God knows I did.
But
I understand. It's anecdotal. You have 600 jobs available in your community. I understand that. And there's something to that. There really is. You know, on the one hand, we talk about the lack of job opportunities. On the other hand, the federal government subsidizes people. We have a lot of them not to work. All right, my friend, thank you for your call. I want to move on. If you've called and you've been waiting, stay there. But I want to move on to Keith X. Keith Ellison. Now, this guy has an entire history of Jew hating. And if he doesn't agree with me, he's free to sue me. But I'm just saying, he does. And he has an entire history of associations with extreme Muslim organizations and individuals, like Farrakhan. And here's a headline from CNN. Representative Keith Ellison, I will say, a.k.a. Keith X, faces renewed scrutiny over past ties to Nation of Islam, defense of anti-Semitic figures. So he would defend anti-Semitic figures. Now, none of this has stopped Chuck Schumer, who still wants him to be chairman of the DNC. You want to know why? Because Chuck Schumer is a sleazeball. He could care less. He's worried about the hard left wing of his party because Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they're sleazeballs too. And they want this guy installed as the head of the DNC so they can show how liberal they are. Look at this, an African-American Muslim. Well, pick a different African-American Muslim because this guy's crap. This guy's crap. I got to hear the people who ran the Hillary Clinton campaign tell Kellyanne Conway and Dave Bossie that the people who voted for Donald Trump are white racists? How dare they? Screw them. Meanwhile, look what you have here. Look at this guy. Let's go on. Representative Keith Ellison's past ties to the Nation of Islam. Right there. That's it. That should disqualify him. And his defense of its anti-Semitic leader, Louis Farrakhan, are resurfacing as he campaigns to lead the Democrat National Committee. Now, let me ask, as a Jew, all you liberal Jews in New York City and New York, all of you who voted for Chuck Schumer, you're a disgrace. You're a disgrace. Ellison, the first Muslim elected to Congress, publicly renounced his association with the Nation of Islam in 2006. That's like David Duke, renouncing his association with the Klan. Oh, a little too late there, pal. In 2006, Keith Ellison was still an adult male. After it became an issue during his run for Congress. Oh, how convenient. When local Republican bloggers began publishing his old law school columns and photos connecting him to the organization. I've long since distanced myself from and rejected the Nation of Islam due to its propagation of bigoted and anti-Semitic ideas and statements, as well as other issues, he wrote at the time. Too damn bad, pal. But several outlets have resurfaced Ellison's past writings as he runs for DNC chair, raising new concerns about his own views and what they would mean for the Democrat Party if he were to be its leader. So I would say to the buffoon who helped run the Hillary Clinton campaign, the buffoon who helped the buffoon, and he's still endorsed by Schumer and Sanders and Warren and those fools. I would say this to her when she's claiming white supremacists supported Trump. No, there's 60-some million of us who actually voted for him who are not. I would say to her, what's your excuse, lady? What's your excuse? You all are even entertaining installing this guy as the head of the Democrat Party. Reminds me of the Democrat Party of before, the party of Robert Byrd. That's what Conway should have said. That's what Bossie should have said. You point your finger at us, you're the party of Robert Byrd. What are you talking about? When he died and he had his service, there was Obama and Clinton and all the rest of them. The whole conga line of the Democrat Party. Can anybody name one Republican governor who was a segregationist? There might be one. Can you name one? I can name a zillion Democrat governors. Can you name one? Just one. Oh, you can't. Let's continue. So they've been reading now what Mr. Keith X has had to say. Right, a CNN K-file review, whatever that is, of Ellison's past writings and public statements during the late 1980s. The late 1980s through the 1990s. That's not that long ago. Reveal his decade-long involvement in the Nation of Islam. It's a 10-year involvement with the Nation of Islam. Well, no, I reject that. I want to be a congressman. And his repeated defense of Farrakhan and other radical black leaders against accusations of anti-Semitism in columns and statements to the press. None of the records reviewed found examples of Ellison making any anti-Semitic comments himself. So he's associated with the Nation of Islam. He defends Farrakhan. In fact, he himself has never said these things. Well, they ought to run him for president then. Run him for president. In one scathing column from 1990 unearthed by CNN's K-File, Ellison accused the university's president of chilling the free expression of black students by openly criticizing a controversial speaker invited to speak on campus by the Africana Student Cultural Center. That speaker, Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael. Oh, Stokely. Yes, I remember Stokely Carmichael. had publicly claimed that Zionists had collaborated with the Nazis in World War II and has been quoted as saying Zionism must be destroyed. University of Minnesota President Nils Hasselmo said he personally found the statements in Touré's speech concerning alleged Zionist collaboration with the Nazis deeply offensive. Ellison, writing under the name of Keith E. Hakim, for the Minnesota Daily, the student newspaper at the University of Minnesota where Ellison attended law school, argued that Hasselmo, quote, denounced Touré's comment without offering any factual refutation of it, unquote. You know, CNN, you're pathetic. He never actually made an anti-Semitic statement. But he did say there was no factual refutation of the Jews collaborating with the Nazis. Oh, this will be great, this DNC chairman. Now, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, and it goes on and on, there's so much here about Keith X. Maybe I'll save it for Monday, but here's the thing. I've started a campaign. It's been picked up by backbenchers who pronounce it and declare it like they came up. Hey, I have an idea. Okay, here it is. I declared myself that Keith Ellison, that is Keith X, a.k.a. Keith Hakim, or whatever the hell he's calling himself, he should be the head of the Democrat Party. I think he perfectly represents it. And they should send him every corner of the country. They should. And I'm glad the Democrats voted again for Nancy Pelosi to be the head of their party in the House. And I'm glad Schumer's going to be head of the Democrats in the Senate. The three stooges, there they are. That's the Democrat Party. A disgrace. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let us go to Brian Manhattan, the great WABC, a college professor. Go, sir.
How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm just fine. Thanks for taking my call. I'm an engineering professor, and just this morning, on Fridays I reserve a few minutes to talk about politics and the Constitution and civics, and just this morning one of my students brought up the carrier deal and how great it was that President Trump was going to be able to force companies to keep manufacturing jobs here. And I said, you realize that you're spending 4 years and $100,000 to elevate yourself into a white-collar job market, yet you're advocating that the federal government spend your tax dollars to retain blue-collar manufacturing jobs here. You're actually hurting yourself for when you graduate and are looking for a job. And the look on his face was priceless, Mark.
Let me just say this, Brian. I don't believe in this blue-collar, white-collar thing. I believe in American jobs, and I absolutely understand your point. The problem here is we need to create all kinds of jobs. But we're not going to create it this way. Crony capitalism does not work. Thank you, sir.
The liberals and the Republicans don't like him, but America does. You can call Mark Levin at 877-381-3811.
You know, folks, it's my great pleasure to bring to you Conservative Review TV, CRTV. Now, here's the thing. The special pre-order discount at $10, remember the subscription, the annual subscription, you get Levin TV, you'll get Michelle Malkin Investigates, you get the Steve Crowder Show, you'll get other shows that are being developed, and all kinds of platforms you can watch us on. And here's the thing. Sunday, the special $10 discount goes away. It's the pre-order discount. So it's $99 a year, the entire year. What's that? About $7.50 a month it comes to. Cable and satellite are $200 a month. And we have a growing cast, and we have a growing platforms, too. So you're going to like it. I know you will. And if you get in now, you can pre-order for our Conservative Review TV network, CRTV, when all these other shows will be picked up as well that we're developing. So you can get it for $89 for the entire year as opposed to $99. Now, one other thing. Or you can do the following, which I kind of like, and it's this. You can get your annual subscription to Levin TV for $99 and get a free hardback copy of Liberty and Tyranny. We went ahead and printed some more. This is the biggest book on conservatism in more than a decade. So this is a big deal. And if you have it, you can also give it as a Christmas or Hanukkah gift. So you can get the one-year subscription and the book. Now, you can't combine them. You either go for the discount of $10, so it's $89 a year, or it's $99 and you get the free copy of Liberty and Tyranny, which is worth more than $10, actually. So that's what we're doing for Christmas and Hanukkah. The pre-order and the book. Now, here's how you do it. You call 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV, or go to crtv.com. I would encourage you to call the toll-free number. You can speak to a real person. They'll tell you the kind of platforms we have. They'll tell you how to get involved and so forth, and how to do and how to get this done, how to gift it if you would like to. That's 844-LEVIN-TV or crtv.com. Now, one last thing for vets and people in the military, or if you know vets and people in the military and want to get them a gift of CRTV, you're $30 off. So if you're a vet or you know a vet, if you're in the military or you know somebody in the military, it's $30 off. I would encourage you to do that now. I don't know how long that's going to last. I twisted arms to get that done. So that's normally $99. For you, it's $69. Okay? So this is what we're doing for the holidays. This is what we're doing for pre-orders. So I hope you'll participate. It's Friday. I really want you to get in under the wire, and I know you'll enjoy this. I know you will. Levin TV. It's 844-LEVIN-TV. Get the whole network, or crtv.com. All right. Now, Gary, Downingtown, Pennsylvania, Sirius Satellite. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Mark. I just want to thank you for your efforts and the time you spend on making America aware of what's really going on. Now, I was kind of on the fence, and I have been for years, well, for the last 8 years anyway. And I know how much time and effort you've put into this. You have taught me. I was never really big into politics until I started listening to you. And you are the smartest man I think I've ever heard.
Well, I don't know about that. That's for sure.
Well, I don't get out much, but but listen, you've really changed my life, and I can't thank you enough. You're like a walking encyclopedia.
Well, let me tell you, you are very, very kind. I appreciate it. And do you have a copy of Plunder and Deceit?
No, I don't.
Well, I'm going to send you a copy of Plunder and Deceit. I think you'll like that a lot. And thank you, Gary. That was a very, very kind call. I appreciate it. And I know where Downingtown, Pennsylvania is. I've been there several times. I'm from Pennsylvania. Abe, in Nevada, it says Pahrump, Nevada. Is that accurate on the Levin app?
I'm listening to iHeartRadio.
The iHeart app.
The iHeart app, yeah.
But, I mean, are you in Pahrump, Nevada?
Yes, Pahrump,
All right.
Nevada, home of Art Bell and the Chicken Ranch.
Oh, a chicken ranch.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not what you might think. It's a brothel. We have brothels here.
Well, congratulations. Anyway, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was calling. First of all, thank you for everything you do, Mark. We all appreciate you very much, and you've really done a lot for America, and you've really helped me to understand what it means to be a conservative, so I appreciate that.
Well, you're very, very kind. You know, people listen to this program. It's not going to be like your typical program where globalist, populist, Trump is great, Trump is bad, Trump is this, Trump is that. We try to analyze these things.
Right, yeah. It's really mysterious to me why these people with their narcotic-like trance for the Democratic Party, how they can't see that that it actually threatens their own existence. As a Gentile who supports and loves Israel, I was stunned by how many American Jews are clustered disproportionately in the Democrat liberal movement.
Yeah, I know. It drives me nuts, too. And yet you'll find others, too, liberal Catholics, liberal evangelicals. I know that sounds like an oxymoron. It's not. There's an allure that is almost religious-like.
It is.
And let me just say this. So if really your faith is very surface-oriented or superficial, I should say, and you really get into this progressivism and statism stuff, it really becomes almost idolatry, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
All right, Abe, I appreciate your call, my friend. God bless. Let's continue, shall we? Michael, Norcross, Georgia, the great WYAY. Go.
How you doing, Mark? Nice to talk to you.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, I'm worried about my vote for Trump. I voted for him to stop Hillary, not necessarily because I really supported him, but
You have to speak a little louder. I couldn't understand you.
I said I voted for Trump, not necessarily because I supported him, but to be sure that Hillary didn't get in.
Well, you're one of what they call the neithers, and I talked about this on Levin TV and on the radio, which is you were one of the guys that went into the voting place. You're not big on Trump, but you can't stand her, so you voted for Trump to stop her. You're the guy. I'm the guy. Many people in this audience. You're the people who won this thing for Trump. You're conservatives. You just had to make a decision, and you needed to stop her, and you voted for him. You like him on several issues, but there's other issues where you're troubled. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, yes, sir. And I'm concerned about this carrier deal. I've always heard and read that Trump was a great negotiator, but Carrier took him to the cleaners on this deal. That they were able to keep their company. They were able to slash half of their payroll, which saved them money. They got $7 million in subsidies. They got a tax break. And Trump, all he did was get the grandstand that he...
You know what? This is a very interesting point. You're saying, okay, now let's look at this deal. The deal is they get $7 million over 10 years. They did slash half their workforce there. But what would you say? Let me try this on you. Okay, but they built a factory in Mexico, and they really can't use it, at least for now. Maybe they'll rent it or sell it, right?
Well, I would be of the opinion that they still could use it. Trump's not president yet.
By the way, what's to stop them from leaving eventually?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They could take what he just gave them and still keep that plan in Mexico right at the moment. Now, it may change once he actually goes through the inauguration process. And I don't think he can do what he's trying to do. I think Congress needs to do that. But anyway, but if he's this great negotiator, Carrier had him over a barrel because he had already made this promise. Carrier knew that he made this promise, and they knew they could get as much as they could from him. And that's exactly the kind of...
That is very, very, very... That's very interesting. And that's an interesting take.
And that's not the kind of negotiating we need for the economy, which I'm worried about my stock market now, even though he apparently has put the stock market kind of record territory, although it's pulled back the last couple of years.
All right, Michael, you're hard to hear, but I got the central point that you were talking about, and I appreciate that. I really do. There was so much more I wanted to get to. I'm just not going to have time. It's just the way it is, you know? Now, they're attacking Mattis. If we can't get Mattis as Secretary of Defense, there's something wrong with this country. There really is. We have got to crush the Senate Democrats. Not get along with them. We have to crush them. We must defeat them. Oh, we believe in the majority, a popular will. And yet they'll use the filibuster as much as they can. You watch. This guy Schumer is a snake. He's a louse. He's a ratfink. You know, there's no escaping it. We're in a full-on holiday mode now. With that comes all the extra demands on our time. That makes getting a great night's sleep every night even more important. So do what I did. Get a Casper. As you know, I've gotten 6 of them, actually, for family members. It's one perfect mattress that helps maintain the right body temperature so I don't get overheated. Its 2 high-tech foams provided all the comfort and support you need, guaranteeing you get the best night's sleep ever. In fact, Time magazine named it one of the best inventions of 2016. It ships for free in a box so small you won't believe it holds a mattress. You can try your Casper for 100 nights risk-free. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. Try yours in your home for 100 nights with free shipping and returns. Go to Casper.com, use code MARK, and you'll get $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. Casper.com, code MARK, $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. Casper.com, terms and conditions apply.
Mark Levin.
Richard Weitengruber commenting on Facebook, Mark, there's a complete difference between a gift of money and tax relief. You're totally wrong on this carrier deal. I can't believe you don't fully understand the real facts of the $7 million. First of all, there are real facts and they're fake facts. It's facts. I understand it. I don't understand why you can't hear what I continue to say to you. If you want across-the-board tax relief so that somebody who makes an air conditioner in one place has the same situation as somebody who makes an air conditioner in another place, in other words, industry-wide, okay, fine. I'm not talking about tax subsidy, tax rate. But if you're giving one company and you are cherry-picking and you're giving them tax breaks, then you're effectively lowering their marginal tax rate and nobody else's. Do you understand? That's called crony capitalism. That defeats the purpose of competition. Why don't you get it? And by the way, I keep getting these, well, states do this. Well, what do I care if states do that? They shouldn't do it either. I gave the examples yesterday. People aren't going from New York to Florida to get subsidies. They're going from New York to Florida because there's no income tax rate. And it happens to be warmer. And there happens to be less regulations. Just look at the country. How do we, the people, conduct ourselves? We have dark blue states that are losing populations and other states that are gaining populations because they have a better environment. I'm not talking about air and water, although that may be part of it. But businesses move from New York to Florida or from California to Texas because of the business environment. Now, there may be some that get subsidies. It's wrong. It's wrong. Why should some businesses get subsidies and some don't? Well, Mark, what about the military? You know, we're talking about air conditioners. I'm not talking about the military. I've heard all these arguments before, and unfortunately, people don't support capitalism and competition the way they used to. They just don't. Oh, well, we do our best here, but I think millions of you actually do. Millions of you do. There's 35% of us left who get it and who believe in this. I'm not going to be able to get to you other callers, and I apologize. But I want to thank you. I will be here all next week, as far as I know, God willing. And we'll get into the issues of the day as well. But I want to remind you also that Sunday ends the pre-order special on CRTV. $10 off. You got to act now. 844-LEVIN-TV and CRTV.com. And take a look at our other opportunities there for you as well. Now it's Friday. You know what that means? In honor of you, my beloved audience, Ray Charles in America. Go! Good night, Griffey. Good night, Pepsi. Good night, Smokey. Good night, America. Get Al-Qaeda. Get the Taliban. Get ISIS. Get all those subhuman cockroaches. I'll see you on Monday behind this microphone, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you in 2 minutes on Levin TV. God bless you.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We have a hell of a show today. By the way, I understand Donald Trump spoke to the president of Taiwan today, and it's driving the Reds nuts. That's great. Absolutely great. The little island of Taiwan. That sends a signal. And if he puts Bolton in as Secretary of State, he's got Mattis at Defense, and Pompeo at CIA, and Flynn as National Security Advisor. That would be unbelievable. But, of course, the left-wing kooks in the Senate, they call themselves Democrats, have already said they're not going to pass a statute enabling Mattis to become Secretary of State. So the Republicans in the Senate better get their brass knuckles on and better pull their pants up and get ready for a fight. They need to steamroll the minority. That's what they need to do. Steamroll the minority. All right. Every day I try to figure out what is a new, interesting, innovative way to get into some of these issues. I want to get back to an issue that is near and dear to so many of our hearts. That is liberty. Ever hear Huey Long? Most of you who are older, you've heard of Huey Long. Many of you younger probably never have. Huey Long in the 20s and 30s. He became governor of Louisiana, and in many respects, I'll say this, people are upset, I can't help it, he was a dictator. Now, he was a very poor man, grew up in rural Louisiana. He took on the Democrat establishment there, and he lost several rounds against them, and then he built this strong machine himself, going door to door to door. He was relentless. And he built this powerhouse of a Democrat party, a one-party state for so many decades in Louisiana. And Long became part of the hard-left progressives in the 1930s, and along with Republicans, by the way. I mean, it was progressivism in the Democrat Party, progressivism in the Republican Party. Like it is today, almost. But I want you to listen to this. It's only 3.5 minutes long. I think I may have done this like 10 years ago, Mr. Producer. But I want you to listen to this. Yep. And I want to know, particularly if you populist, nationalist, agrarians agree with this. I want to know if you Republicans agree with this. I want to know if you Stephen Moore types agree with this. This is Huey Long, December 11, 1934. Cut to go.
According to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with. Now, how are you going to feed the balance of the people? What's Morgan and Baruch and Rockefeller and Mellon going to do with all that grub? They can't eat it. They can't wear the clothes. They can't live in the house. Give them a yacht. Give them a palace. Send them to Reno and give them a new wife when they want it, if that's what they want. But when they've got everything on the God's living earth that they can eat and they can wear and they can live in, and all that their children can live in and wear and eat and all their children's children can use, then we got to call Mr. Morgan and Mr. Mellon and Mr. Rockefeller back and say, come back here. Put that stuff back on this table here that you took away from here, that you don't need. Leave something else for the American people to consume. And that's the program. We're not going to destroy the Gulf Refining Company. We're not going to destroy the Standard Oil Company. But we're going to say that the limit of any one man's stock ownership in the Standard Oil Company is from $3 to $5 million to that individual, and that the balance of the people of America own the balance of what the Standard Oil Company is worth. All right. Then we start from the bottom. that the 25 or more million American families shall have a homestead, a home, and the comforts of a home, including an automobile and a radio, the things it takes in that house to live on. We say to America, 125 million, none shall be too big, none shall be too poor, none shall work too much, none shall be idle. No luxurious mansions empty, none walking the streets, none impoverished, none in pestilence, none in want, but in the land blessed by the smile of the Creator, with everything to be consumed, to be eaten, to be worn, that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
There you have it. 80-some years ago. You agree with all that? Do you agree with that? Huey Long? Governor of Louisiana? Sound pretty good? Populists out there sound pretty good? I bet it does. I'll address it in a minute. 10 years later, Franklin Roosevelt, in a radio address to the nation, promotes what he promoted in his last State of the Union speech as well, a second Bill of Rights. I want you to listen to this very carefully, too. See if you agree with it. Cut one, go.
In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industry, or shops, or farms, or mines of the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of farmers to raise and sell their products at a return which will give them and their families a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age and sickness and accident and unemployment. Finally, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. America's own rightful place in the world depends in large part upon how fully these and similar rights have been carried into practice for all our citizens. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world. One of the great American industrialists of our day, a man who has rendered human service to his country in this crisis, recently emphasized the grave dangers of rightist reaction in this nation. All clear-thinking businessmen share that concern. Indeed, if such reaction should develop, if history were to repeat itself, and we were to return to the so-called normalcy of the 1920s, then it is certain that even though we shall have conquered our enemies on the battlefields abroad, we shall have yielded to the spirit of fascism here at home. I ask the Congress to explore the means for implementing this economic Bill of Rights, for it is definitely the responsibility of the Congress so to do, and the country knows it. Many of these problems are already before committees of the Congress in the form of proposed legislation. I shall from time to time communicate with the Congress with respect to these and further proposals.
All right, what do you think of that? You like the second Bill of Rights? You like Huey Long's statement? Share the wealth? I mean, these rich robber barons, they can only use so much. They can only eat so much. They can only wear so many clothes, have so many palaces. What about everybody else? And what about the obligation? Everybody should have a home and a car and health care and retirement and food and all the basics and more than the basics. What about that? You have a problem with that? Well, let me comment on this as soon as I return.
Mark Levin.
Let me read this from the Soviet Constitution of 1936. Article 118. Citizens of the USSR have the right to work, that is, are guaranteed the right to employment and payment for their work in accordance with its quantity and quality. The right to work is ensured by the socialist organization of the national economy, the steady growth of the productive forces of Soviet society, the elimination of the possibility of economic crises, and the abolition of unemployment. That sounds pretty good. Article 119. Citizens of the USSR have the right to rest and leisure. The right to rest and leisure is ensured by the reduction of the working day to 7 hours for the overwhelming majority of the workers, the institution of annual vacations with full pay for workers and employees, and the provision of a wide network of sanatoria, rest homes, and clubs for the accommodation of the working people. Wow! Article 120 of the Soviet Constitution of 1936, citizens of the USSR have the right to maintenance in old age, and also in case of sickness or loss of capacity to work. This right is ensured by the extensive development of social insurance of workers and employees at state expense, free medical service for the working people, and the provision of a wide network of health resorts for the use of the working people. Sounds cool, right? Sounds like a really, really wonderful society. Article 121. Citizens of the USSR have the right to education. It's ensured by universal compulsory elementary education, by education including higher education, being free of charge, by the system of state stipends for the overwhelming majority of students in the universities and colleges, for instruction in schools being conducted in the native language, and by the organization in the factories, state farms, machine and tractor stations, and collective farms of free vocational, technical, agronomical training of the working people. Article 122. Women in the USSR are accorded equal rights with men in all spheres of economic, state, cultural, social, and political life. The possibility of exercising these rights is ensured to women by granting them an equal right with men to work, payment for work, rest and leisure, social insurance and education, and by state protection of the interests of the mother and child, pre-maternity and maternity leave with full pay, and the provision of a wide network of maternity homes, nurseries, and kindergartens. Wow! Such an advanced society. Article 123, equality of rights of citizens of the USSR, irrespective of their nationality or race, in all spheres of economic, state, and cultural, social, and political life, is an indefeasible law. Article 124, in order to ensure to citizens freedom of conscience, the church in the USSR is separated from the state and the school from the church. Freedom of religious worship and freedom of anti-religious propaganda is recognized for all citizens. The people in the USSR shall, A, be granted freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, including the holding of mass meetings, freedom of street processions and demonstrations. And it goes on. My God, that's a worker's paradise. What's the problem with the Soviet Constitution? What's the problem with Huey Long? What's the problem with the Second Bill of Rights from Franklin Roosevelt? What's the problem? The problem is liberty. Liberty gets in the way. The problem is the individual gets in the way. These utopian societies require adherence to the central government. That's the problem. When you abandon or eviscerate the American Constitution, in our case, none of these other things are really possible, because you're abandoning the Constitution for concentrated, centralized power in the relative handful of a relative few with an army of bureaucrats. The entire purpose of our Constitution is to enable you as a free individual to pursue your interests, to practice your faith, to build a business, to trade or not trade. The entire purpose of the Constitution is to set up a government that nurtures your unalienable rights. It doesn't provide you with your material interests and desires and demands. Because in order to do that, you have to deny somebody else their liberty. This isn't theoretical, this is legitimate. There's soft authoritarian regimes and genocidal authoritarian regimes, but they're authoritarian nonetheless. I want to continue with this hour. There's other things I want to get to during the course of the program, including Keith X. More coming out on Keith X, the DNC chairman wannabe. But stick with me on this. I'll be right back.
The new American Revolution starts here. The Mark Levin Show. Call in at 877-381-3811.
Do you think Huey Long would agree with the protectionist and tariff policies being advocated today by the populists? You better believe he would. The progressives instituted them. How about Franklin Roosevelt? You better believe he would. I'm not talking about enforcing provisions of a trade deal with Japan involving discs or tires involving... No, I'm talking about an ideology that if you dare to build enterprises overseas, that we're going to punish you. That mentality. Is that a freedom mentality? Is that a capitalism mentality? Will that build an economy? You know, before anybody else, really, before anybody else, I've been a fan of Sarah Palin. I was a fan of Sarah Palin when she was governor of Alaska. She was on our radar. You know, we talked about her here. I don't always agree with Sarah Palin. She doesn't always agree with me. It's not like we're in touch all the time. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to read something that she published, an op-ed, over at Young Conservatives, youngcons.com, yesterday, about this Carrier deal. She said, I'm ecstatic for Carrier employees. Their bosses just decided to keep shop. What a relief for hundreds of workers. Merry Christmas, Indiana. We don't yet know terms of the public-private deal that was cut to make the company stay. We do at this point, but that doesn't matter. But let's hope every business is equally incentivized to keep Americans working in America. Foundational to our exceptional nation's sacred private property rights, a business must have to locate where it wishes. In a free market, if a business makes a mistake, including a marketing mistake that perhaps Carrier executives made, threatening to move elsewhere, claiming efficiency's sake, then the market's invisible hand punishes. Thankfully, that same hand rewards based on good business decisions. But this time-tested truth assumes we're operating on a level playing field when government steps in arbitrarily with individual subsidies, favoring one business over others. It sets inconsistent, unfair, illogical precedent. Meanwhile, the invisible hand that best orchestrates a free people's free enterprise system gets amputated. Then special interests creep in and manipulate markets. Republicans oppose this, remember? Instead, we support competition on a level playing field, remember? Because we know special interest crony capitalism is one big fail. What she means is our government ought not benefit one business against another. Politicians picking and choosing recipients of corporate welfare is railed against by fiscal conservatives for it's a hallmark of corruption and socialism.